I have something very exciting to share with you today, and that is a reference to 2nd Maccabees in the writings of Philo of Alexandria. Now, this is something like discovering a unicorn because many people don't believe that Philo ever did reference 2nd Maccabees, but today I will show you that he in fact did. This is extremely significant for apologists because many apologists will appeal to Philo to argue against the canonicity of the Deuterocanonical books. If you find this topic interesting, be sure to hit that subscribe button for future content like this. And if you found this helpful, please hit that like button. Without any further ado, let's get right into it. Now, many Protestant apologists use Philo as evidence against the canonicity of the Deuterocanonical books. They argue something like the following. They'll say Philo was a first century Jew. He wrote extensively on scripture, which he recognized as canonical. He did not quote from or reference the Deuterocanonical books, therefore for him they were not canonical. Now, the fact that Philo was a first century Jew, contemporary with the apostles, and didn't recognize the Deuterocanonical books makes the Catholic and Orthodox case for a Jewish basis of the canonicity of the Deuterocanon less likely. Okay, so this would be this would be a weak spot, I would say, in the Catholic and Orthodox case if this argument is correct. Now, of course, there are multiple issues with this argument, but I really want to debunk that second premise that Philo did not quote from or reference the Deuterocanonical books. I will show you that he, in fact, did because he references 2nd Maccabees. Now, in his book, An Introduction to the Old Testament in Greek, Dr. Henry Swete writes the following. He says, Philo shows some knowledge of the book, talking about 2nd Maccabees in Quod Omnis Probus Liber. He's talking about Every Good Man is Free, which was written by Philo. Now, you don't need to take my word on this reference. You can take Dr. Henry Sweet's word, who is a titan of Septuagint scholarship. He is an excellent top-tier scholar, and I think the fact that he acknowledges this reference gives it a lot of weight. So what is this reference that Swete is referring to? Let's take a look at it. So in this book, Every Good Man is Free, Philo writes the following. He says, at different times, a great number of chiefs of every variety of disposition and character have occupied their country, talking about Judea, some of whom have endeavored to surpass even ferocious wild beasts in cruelty, leaving no sort of inhumanity unpracticed, and have never ceased to murder their subjects and hold troops, and have even torn them to pieces while living, like cooks cutting them limb from limb, till they themselves, being overtaken by the vengeance of divine justice, have at last experienced the same miseries in their turn. Now, this is a reference to 2nd Maccabees, and we can identify that reference by checking the parallel text in 2nd Maccabees. So you'll see I've color-coded the references to 2nd Maccabees, which make a connection. So when he says that there were a great number of chiefs, you see in 2nd Maccabees chapter 5, verses 11 through 13, it says the following, But when it was made known that the king, talking about Antiochus, concerning the things that had happened, he assumed Judah was revolting. So he's talking about how the king Antiochus was a chief over Judah. So this aligns with the reference to the chiefs, which Philo is talking about. Well, it continues. He said, some of whom have endeavored to surpass even ferocious wild beasts in cruelty. Well, this phrase wild beasts is also found in this same passage. It says, therefore he broke camp and left Egypt raging like a wild beast, just like Philo said. Now the parallels continue. He says later, and have never ceased to murder their subjects in whole troops, and have even torn them to pieces while living, like cooks cutting them limb from limb. Well, this exact same message is in this same passage in 2nd Maccabees. It says he also commanded his soldiers to slaughter without mercy those they happened upon, and to slay those going up into the house. So you have multiple parallels in the same passages. You have chiefs, which corresponds to the king Antiochus. You have who occupied their country. You have Judah referenced. You have a reference to wild beasts, which is the exact same words used in 2nd Maccabees. And then you have murdering subjects and troops, cutting them limb from limb. And then you see in 2nd Maccabees soldiers slaughtering those who they happened upon. So there's multiple parallels to this passage in Philo. And Dr. Swete is reading these, and he's saying these parallels are indicating a reference to this passage. Now, the parallels continue. In chapter 9, verses 5 through 6, Philo says, "Till they themselves, being overtaken by the vengeance of divine justice, have at last experienced the same miseries in their turn." So he's talking about by the justice of God, these rulers over Judea suffered the same miseries they inflicted on their subjects. Now, this exact same message is found in 2 Maccabees, saying, "By the all-seeing Lord, the God of Israel, struck him with an incurable and unseen plague. And just as he finished speaking, incurable pains in the bowels took hold of him, and piercing torments racked his inner parts. And this was altogether just for one who tortured the bowels of others in many strange ways." So there you see that same miseries that Antiochus put on his subjects, God gave them back in his divine justice. So again, multiple parallels to the 2 Maccabees passage. Now, the apologetic value of this is very high, I think. Now, it debunks the claim that Philo never referenced the Deuterocanonical books, because according to Dr. Henry Swete, he did in this passage in 2 Maccabees. Now, of course, this is not, he doesn't say that this is canonical per se, but the fact that he references it does debunk that common claim that he never cited from or referenced the Deuterocanonical books in any way. So the fact that he did does perhaps give some weight to the Catholic and Orthodox position on the canonicity of the Deuterocanonical books. The reference has clear parallels with the text in 2 Maccabees and has the recognition of Dr. Henry Swete. So don't take my word for it. You can take his word for it. You can read the passages yourself carefully and determine for yourself if you agree with him. If you found this topic interesting, hit that subscribe button for future content like this. Hit that like button if you found it helpful. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.